Yo, what's up guys? It's Talon, and I don't love making videos that are like kind of more negative in nature, but I do sometimes like talking about, topics that a lot of people care about, and a lot of people, they sort of have, a lot of problems with like matchmaking, stuff like that. I occasionally talk about this, but I don't talk about it a lot. But basically, I want to show you guys the game. So here, there's 3 sovereigns on my team, there's 2 on the enemy, and their jungler, I'm pretty sure, is corrupt. Yeah, their jungler is definitely corrupt. He's on a smurf, so he's challenger in that account, I believe. And so, a pretty high elo game, and quite low quality, and I've kind of experienced that a lot. And I want to talk about the factors that contribute to like the lower qualities of the games. I'm not necessarily trying to make this like a rant video or like complaining a bunch. Like, again, that's just the state of the game. It is what it is. And I also want to talk about like why it is, and also talk about the, I guess, devil's advocate side, or like why it's not a thing to just complain about 24/7. But it's obviously, kind of a negative thing. So anyways, with those sort of introductions aside, overall, I've noticed personally, and this is personal experience, that high elo games have felt a lot lower quality compared to before. And I'm not talking about like years ago, I'm talking about like 3 months ago, 6 months ago, like even last season. Like there's generally been a bit of a drop in quality, and there's been a lot more people with much lower win rates. So I had a different game, for example, where I played with 2 sovereigns on my team, both who were under 52% win rate, and then a sovereign on the enemy team was like 52, like exactly. And now this is a much lower win rate than like most sovereigns would typically be having, and it's a very common thing at this point in the season that I'm just noticing, and you will see a lot of lag. I kind of have been lagging a lot lately if you're wondering why it's glitching a little, but yeah, like generally speaking, it's a lot worse in terms of how low the win rates are of these people. And people are saying like, oh, you can spam games to climb. But normally, if people played 700 games with a 52% win rate, they wouldn't necessarily get to Sovereign. They would maybe be stuck in like Grandmaster. They'd be stuck in like maybe Challenger. It'd be very rare they'd actually get all the way up to Sovereign. But now with Galio's Aegis, it's a lot easier for people. And also, ultimately, this is like the biggest reason I believe that there are people able to climb so easily. So if you guys like obviously noticed, me, I have 5 accounts right now. 3 of them are Challenger, around 60 to 75 marks, and then I have 2 accounts that are about 50 to 55 mark Grandmaster, all of them above 60% win rate, all solo queue. But even these accounts, I've been climbing way quicker due to Galio's Aegis, to the point that I have days where I'll go like I had a stretch of games where I went 1 and 8 in jungle, and I gained a mark because I had like 5 S ratings, 2 A ratings, and then I just had a fortitude left over. So I went 1 and 8 and I gained a mark. Now, yes, I played well like in most of those games, loss streaks happen, but I really don't think that going 1 and 8 should lead to me gaining marks no matter how well I play. Because in any system, like the result should be to some extent valued. And again, I think most people would agree, like the biggest issue is not that I'm climbing. I think most people think I should probably be Sovereign, or that I should climb. But the problem is, it's not just players like me who are climbing really quickly because of this. It's also players who are, again, low win rate, not winning very many games, who have never peaked past Grandmaster, all of a sudden hitting Sovereign or hitting these higher ranks, due to the fact that there's ways to abuse it. Like there's, you can play Scion and just play go 0-10, run down turrets and just play for S rating. You can play supports and build items that heal to get your healing up, and then to just make sure you don't die, and play for KDA and play for CC time rather than playing to win. And you can do all these things that allow people to climb a lot quicker than they otherwise should. So the first thing, basically, first kind of reason I feel like higher elo games, and again, if we kind of watch my teammates throughout this, maybe we'll notice I wasn't not super focused on the gameplay, but like they're not very high quality players. But that's the first thing, is the fact that you can abuse Galio's Aegis to climb with a relatively low win rate, and it doesn't even take that many games. Before, at least if you spammed games, you kind of had to play like over like 1,000 games to really climb. Whereas now, again, it's like, you can play 600-700, which is a lot, but is very reasonable and not unreasonable, basically, for a lot of players at this point. The other thing, obviously, with the regular ranked is duo and trio. So 2 of my teammates, for example, or maybe all 3 of them, I don't remember, like all 3 of the Sovereigns, 2 or 3 of the Sovereigns, they play a lot of 5Q, they play a lot of trio, and so their win rates, despite their skill level, are relatively high. I think in the 55 pluses. something like that. And then they'll sometimes go and queue up a solo queue game, or they'll queue up a duo queue game. And then when you're a person playing 5Q, who then goes and queues up a duo queue game or a solo queue game, you're not going to be, you know, that same skill level. Like if I'm 115 marks, being 115 marks solo queue versus trio, obviously is a different level of skill required to do those, and so it kind of makes the quality of the games again potentially a bit lower. And now some people will say, oh well, Legend Queue is a solve to this. Well, Legend Queue has very similar problems because Legend Queue doesn't have Galio's Aegis, but it does have LP gains based on your performance. So if you perform really well in a Legend Queue game, like let's say you have a good KDA, you have these good stats, whatever, again, you will lose less. You don't lose 0, but you lose less. And then if you do well in a win, you also gain more. To the point that people are reaching Legend with a 45%, I've seen a screenshot of a 45% win rate with 400 games reaching Legend, which again, that's not that many. 400 games, like that's a good amount, but it's nothing crazy, and he's a 45% win rate reaching this. And I've seen last season, one of the people was rank 1 at a 49% win rate in Legend Queue. Plenty of people below 50% reaching Legend under 400 games, which is obviously just making quality of Legend Queue, obviously the solo queue solution, you know, not good. And then luckily in regular ranked, you have to have a little higher win rate. You can't really climb with 45% unless you're absolutely abusing Galio's Aegis, which is pretty hard. But you can climb with 49, 50, 51, lower win rates to really high ranks. And then again, the issue here is the fact that you can play duo or trio or 5-man. And so those are kind of the negatives. Is like, again, the fact that duo, trio, 5Q versus solo queue in ranked Galio's Aegis being abused, and then Legend Queue, the solo queue solution, not really being super high quality either for the reasons we mentioned. So those are kind of the negatives. You know, solutions to this could obviously be you could make a regular ranked, like I don't know why I can't talk. You can make a regular ranked like solo queue past a certain rank. I don't recommend this. The reason you could do this is obviously then, you know, you solve the solo queue issue, but I don't think this is a good thing because the game is a casual game. Like, it's a mobile game. It's meant to be played with your friends. I don't think they should take away that aspect from the game. They can obviously use Legend Queue as a way to kind of have a solve for the more competitive oriented players. And if they want to do this, they can, but there's a few problems with this as well. So if they try to make Legend Queue, say they just remove the fact that you gain more or less based on performance, and so then you have to actually have a 50% plus win rate to climb, which would be a very simple solution. Well, the problem with this is in regions like NA, and even EU, and definitely other ones like Oceania, whatever, they don't have enough players. So if not enough players, like the Legend Queue matchmaking times are already so long that there has to be a dedicated server in NA where people ping and are like, hey, queue up Legend Queue. And if you don't have people, all of the legends at once queuing at the exact same time because of the Discord server, you won't find games. So there's already that issue. And then if the bad players who are 48, 49, 45% win rate climb in Legend Queue, if they end up not being allowed to climb, then there's going to be even less players. So there's going to be a big player base issue. And it's going to be really the same for regular ranked. Like if they make these solutions in regular ranked, the player base issue is going to once again lead to really long matchmaking times. Because already if you're Sovereign and even Challenger in NA, which again, NA is not the largest player base, but it's not a tiny player base either, relative to the rest of the game. Obviously like things like EU and Asia are going to be bigger. But if you end up queuing up even in Challenger, Sovereign, NA, you're going to have relatively long matchmaking times at certain times, especially if you don't play during peak hours. And especially if you're in Sovereign, obviously, compared to Challenger. And so the queue time issue is going to be kind of a problem. So honestly, in my opinion, I think the biggest problem with this whole thing is that they tried to do essentially the same thing that works in other servers. So like in China, Legend Queue works because so many people play. But in NA, Legend Queue just spreads out the player base. So now Sovereigns, half the people are playing in Sovereign, half the people are playing Legend Queue, and then boom, you have long matchmaking times in both. And then again, these, you know, matchmaking issues can again only really be solved if you have larger player base. So you kind of have to make sure that all of the players are in one or the other. They're either all playing ranked or they're all playing solo queue, right, or Legend Queue. If you have them split up like this, you're always going to kind of have this issue. And so really the only solution and you guys feel free to tell me other solutions that you think would be beneficial, but the only solution I really think is either you split everyone into playing ranked or you lock ranked at a certain time. So like once you hit Sovereign, you just have to go play Legend Queue, or once you hit Sovereign, I think Royal said this before, you have to like close the leaderboard. So there's no leaderboard for ranked, or there's no leaderboard for ranked is basically what he said, because people are mostly playing for the leaderboard once you get past Sovereign or past whatever. And so if there was no leaderboard, then the competitive players would all have to go play Legend Queue if they wanted a competitive experience. So something along those lines that means that you can't climb with a below 50% win rate, and then you you can't climb with a below a 50% win rate, but also doesn't dilute the player base too much because people are spread apart between ranked and legendary ranked. Like, that would be essentially what would need to happen to make these quality of games a bit better. So that's sort of my overall rant. I know it wasn't the most concise, but basically the gist of it is, again, ranked quality dropping, and has been dropping obviously for a while because of the reasons that we mentioned throughout this video. However, a lot of people will watch these types of videos and they'll be like, oh, well, this is why I can't climb. The reality is the players who climb are still generally the good ones. Like I have 5 accounts, 60% plus win rate, hitting Challenger in short amount of games because I'm playing on 5 accounts. So they're all like 200 games or less for the most part, that I'm hitting Challenger and whatever. And so of course, like, you can still climb. The problem is the quality, not the ability to climb as a good player. And I want to make that very clear. I don't want people who are Emerald using this as a reason for why they're, not Sovereign or why they're not higher. I don't think that that's what the system is doing negative. I think, again, what the system is doing negative is allowing people to not even have to spam games that much. Like, if you play 2,000 games and you climb, that's an anomaly, right? Like, that's a very small portion. But the amount of people playing 600-700 games in a season is not that small. I mean, it's, again, still not the average, but it's a lot more. And so when it gets to that point where people can climb, and that's kind of how it's gotten, the quality of games drops from being obviously not great in the earlier seasons to really, really poor, where essentially, again, we have a Sovereign Vi building Blade of the Rune King, randomly dying for no reason as their Fed members dead. We have a 0-4 Yasuo, who was the best Sovereign of the 3, funnily enough. And then my support, and again, I'm not really like flaming people, they're just playing the game, they're free to play the game however it makes them happy. It's not their fault. But my support was, I believe, a really low win rate in Legend Queue last season as well, like below 50%, and kind of for the same reasons. And, isn't really a player who should be a Sovereign high elo player, and yet these players are able to climb in these situations. And my support played fine in this game, so I'm not like flaming them in terms of performance. But again, I just kind of wanted to mention these things, and I wanted to also make sure people aren't just like using it as some type of excuse necessarily, but rather just, again, having this awareness of the fact that it's more so that it makes the quality of games really low, rather than, again, not allowing you to climb specifically, because I don't love when people make a bunch of excuses about things or whatever, but also, obviously, low quality of games is, not very enjoyable. And so that's kind of the gist of this video. That's really all I wanted to talk about. I've been making a lot of videos, whatever. I just wanted to show you guys on this Baron Steel, because I guess the Baron Steel showed up. It was XD, funny. But that was pretty much the gist of the video. I've done a pretty bad job recently of being positive on my stream. Like, I've been lagging really bad, and then these games are, again, not the most enjoyable, and I've had pretty bad mental for the last couple of days, and had like bad quality of streams. Like, the content hasn't been very enjoyable. I want to do better at that. I have a really hard time when I'm lagging to not get frustrated, and that's something I'm trying to do better, to make the quality still better. And that's why I wanted to make this video as well, because I thought it's topical in terms of my recent experiences, whatever. So yeah, thank you guys for listening to the rambling. I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed.